It's election season, and the Democratic primary is right around the corner. Today on Stay at the Water, we're continuing our discussion with candidates who want to represent you in the Virginia House and also statewide. Today, we have two candidates for Lieutenant Governor. This is Stay at the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville, and we'll be back in just a moment. Again, thank you so much for joining us on Stay at the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville. I would like to thank and wish all the mothers out here who on this Mother's Day, this is your day, this is your special day. Without our mothers, none of us would be here on this phenomenal Sunday here in Hampton Roads. Enjoy yourselves. Those of you out there who still have your mothers with you, make sure you spoil them on this day because we can't appreciate our mothers enough. I know I like to give a shout out to my mother. She's no longer with us, but Betty Claville, who we love dearly. Also, my mother, Margaret Claville, my wife, Michelle, and all of my sisters, nieces, and all of my relatives. We love you, mothers. Without you, we have no idea where we'll be. So this is your day. Enjoy your day. Again, we'd like to thank you so much for joining us here on Stay at the Water as we continue our discussion with candidates that want to represent you in the House of Delegates and also statewide. For this entire month, we're talking with candidates who want to represent you as Lieutenant Governor, Attorney General, and also Governor of the Commonwealth. The Democratic primary is right around the corner. The Republican convention was just held on yesterday with the rank system, and they're going to find out who's going to represent them. But the Democratic primary is June 8th. June 8th. Early voting has already started, so you can go to your registrar's office. You can order your ballot online. You can go and drop it off. But early voting has started. But the official date is June 8th. You can vote for who you want to represent you. And also, for our question of the week, for you to engage us online, our social media at Hot91 Online. That's at Hot91 Online on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Our question is, how do you feel about the CDC's new mask guidelines? And how do you feel about our governor lifting the restrictions coming this summer? How do you feel about those guidelines for the mask? Do you think we should keep it longer? Do you think they're right on task? Or do you think that, maybe we're pushing it just a little too much? And what do you think about the governor opening up the Commonwealth on the 15th? Give us your thoughts. Again, at our social media at Hot91 Online and also WNSBonline.org. That's WNSBonline.org. Let us know what you think. Here at WNSB, we value you, the listener. Today, we have another candidate for Lieutenant Governor who's going to join us and let us know why he wants to serve you as Lieutenant Governor here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Delegate Sam Rasoul, welcome to Stay the Water.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Claville. A pleasure to be with you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, before we start, again, this is a wonderful day that we recognize all our mothers. I'm going to give you an opportunity to wish whoever you want a happy Mother's Day.
Well, the first mother I got to see this morning was my own mother, thankfully, and I got to wish her a happy Mother's Day. And then a very special woman in my life is also my wife. We have 3 children, and she's been an awesome mom and an awesome wife for the past 15 years. So happy Mother's Day to all those who've been sacrificing so much.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, this is their day. Delegate Rasoul, right now, it's things are heating up in the race for Lieutenant Governor and also for the House races. And we know here in the Commonwealth, there's an important election every year. So this is definitely no different from any other year, but we believe that there is more at stake. What do you believe is at stake in this election, and more specifically, the nomination for Lieutenant Governor, Governor, Attorney General?
I think a lot of people should be trying to think back to November 2016 and wonder how that happened. And that November 2020, with this new chapter, does not take us back to before November 2016. It cannot, or else we might end up right back there. So what we learned over the years is that people were anxious for us to dig down deep, make sure that we are present in communities, make sure that we are listening and respecting and lifting up marginalized communities and communities of color. In fact, one shocking statistic that some people might not know is that more people in almost every community of color voted for Donald Trump in 2020 than in 2016. The black men, black women, Hispanic men, Hispanic women, Arab, Muslim Americans, Indian Americans. The reality is that we should understand this as a Democrat. This is a clarion call for us to dig down deep in these communities. How we perform here in Virginia in 2021 is in fact the standard and the bellwether for what the next 4 years could be bringing throughout the country. And so my campaign for Lieutenant Governor is building on the work that I've done over the past 8 years in the General Assembly, saying policy is great, but showing up is important. Respecting, being inclusive. These are the values that people are looking for, and that's going to be the critical difference that we've got to bring to this campaign season.
Absolutely. You mentioned a lot of important issues. We're going to try to peel them back one by one. But I want you to tell us a little bit about some of the efforts that you've been working with, more specifically in your district, District 11, and the time that you've served.
Yeah, well, I'm in Roanoke, Virginia. This is where I was raised, so several hours from your neck of the woods. But I will tell you, as I've traveled this Commonwealth as part of my what we call Virginia Grit Tour, I have pledged to visit every city and county in person in a safe way, gathering the stories and struggles of everyday Virginians. And there is a common thread, whether I'm in Lee County, which is further west than Detroit, or Accomack County out on the Eastern Shore, in Norfolk down in South Side. People are anxious to not be forgotten. And we've tried to ensure that we are continuously trying to uplift these voices. Over the past 8 years in the General Assembly, some of my priorities have been just that. While certainly there's the policy side, I'm vice chair of the Health Committee on Education, Elections, and Public Safety Committees, where we've tried to bring criminal justice reforms, taking us from 49th to 12th in the nation as far as ease of voting, ensuring that we are implementing healthcare policies to give us broad access. Those things are critically important, and every year I've been able to pass bipartisan legislation. However, one thing that we've got to keep in mind is voting is not a logical decision based on policy. It is an emotional decision. And so what I've been most proud of during our time in the General Assembly is starting the Impact Center, which has trained over 2,000 candidates, activists, and organizers in a new age relational organizing model on a better way to win and engage, where we started the Democratic Promise, challenging the way the party even engages with people.
Right. Absolutely.
How can we help you? And the last program is the You Write the Bill, actually bring together and help the crowdsource bill ideas and push them through the General Assembly.
Absolutely. It's interesting you talk about the people writing the bill here. State of Water is an initiative of the Center for African American Public Policy here at Norfolk State University and the College of Liberal Arts. And the idea, the premise behind it is to bring policymakers to the people and create policy from the ground up, as opposed to what we know how lobbyists created from the top down. Created by lobbyists or special interests, government relations professionals, given to the elected officials, and then implementing in the community. Can you talk a little bit about your people's platform and how that people first will actually resonate or can work in the current system that we have?
8 years ago, I came to the General Assembly. I started reading the bills real quick. I found a bill that was very complicated. It was a utility bill, and written by Dominion Energy. And I couldn't figure it all out. I went to the SEC. They explained it to me. I realized, man, this is just not good. It was about to steal $500 million from Virginia ratepayers. So here I was in my first few weeks. I start, coming to everyone, my Democratic colleagues and anyone else who would listen and say, hey, I just found something. I was like a kid in a candy store. And all I heard was crickets. No one was interested. In fact, my Republican colleague came up to me and he said, hey, bro, freshmen do not ask questions about Dominion bills.
What?
And the next day, Dominion was at my doorstep, and I said, look, this is just bad for ratepayers. And then I realized through that whole process that there are some Democratic and Republican issues, liberal and conservative, but there are a lot of issues that are just big guys versus little guys in the General Assembly. And you hit the nail on the head. Some of these special interests push their agenda. I said when I launched I was going to create a people's platform where we were crowdsourcing ideas from around the state, because the reality is every year we consider about 2,500 pieces of legislation. And our approach to education isn't a couple of paragraphs. It is literally hundreds of ideas, if not thousands, that come together in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And no one has a monopoly on that. And so we put together a platform where we have a Marshall Plan for moms to economically uplift women, especially women of color, where we have a full broadband plan, a COVID recovery plan, a way we're going to approach uplifting older Virginians. And inside of those plans, you will find people's platform policies where everyday Virginians have said, here's something I'd like to throw in. And so we've been able to really try to capture the voice of many Virginians in all of that.
Absolutely. You're listening to WNSB Hot 91 here at Norfolk State University. This is Stay the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville. And all month, we're interviewing and talking with candidates who want to represent you as their Lieutenant Governor, Attorney General, and Governor of the Commonwealth. Right now, we're talking with Delegate Sam Rasoul, who represents the 11th District here in the state of Virginia, who wants to be your Lieutenant Governor. Delegate Rasoul, you talked about the Marshall Plan for moms and how fitting it is Mother's Day, right? and part of that plan, you talk about the problem. We're looking now how COVID has really impacted women, working women, and more specifically, working mothers, and how, they are being impacted more than any other demographic as it relates to work and home and raising children. And we see now that a lot of the issues that mothers have been dealing with, especially working mothers, COVID has revealed that. In your Marshall Plan for moms, can you go a little deeper into it for our listeners?
Yeah, this is the reality is there were so many struggles even before COVID, and it really exacerbated things, not only in losing jobs, but careers thrown completely off track, the mental health and anguish. And I understand, look, we all love our children, but to be, cooped in for many, many months,
yes,
trying to figure out how you're going to Zoom educate them, create a livelihood, it was a real struggle. Now, objectively, we know that women took the economic brunt, especially women of color. So our Marshall Plan for moms goes through and says newborn to 5 child care throughout Virginia. True paid and family leave, paid sick leave, what we call caregiver tax credit. Many of us are caught in the generational squeeze. I'm helping to care for my parents, and of course we have our children. Those are caregiver hours that are not valued in the Commonwealth, and of course it falls mainly on women. So providing them with that support, even policies thinking about how we schedule, fair scheduling laws, which we don't have in Virginia but are in other states, and then truly lifting the minimum wage to $15 an hour, while there to get to $12 an hour in the next couple of years. The income inequality in our country is unethical, and we have got to take it head on for sure.
Wow, absolutely. I saw on your campaign platform you have the chief. Is it the chief mother's advocate, the chief mother's officer, if you are elected?
we have said our key policy person is going to be the chief moms officer in my office, which is really focusing on this intersectionality of uplifting women, supporting our families, and doing what we can to boost our economy by starting from the bottom up. And to me, this was a perfect example of we're going to be very direct, and that chief moms officer is going to be the key policy person in my campaign.
Phenomenal.
In my office.
You know, we also looked at COVID. It really impacted a lot of issues. We've talked about it extensively here on Save the Water. It's been talked about across the country, how really it revealed a lot of struggles that a lot of people were having. You mentioned not just mothers struggling, but also mothers having to be the primary caretakers for our parents. And all of us have stories where we're in that middle generation, as you talked about, where we're giving a helping hand and a hand up to our parents. You also talk about in your platform lifting up older Virginians. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you would actually lift up older Virginians? We've heard a lot of dialogue about supporting our senior citizens and so forth, but to be honest with you, a lot of it has fallen short. Let us know how you would delve into it.
Yeah, and of course, as Virginians are aging now, they are not wanting to just sit idle. They want to live full lives. And it's certainly a generational difference in many ways. As someone who has to kind of sit there and fill my father's pillbox with his weekly medication, you see those struggles firsthand in lots of different ways. So what can we be doing to uplift everyday Virginians? My background is in geriatric healthcare, and so very specifically we see the struggles around the cost of pharmaceutical drugs. In our country, it's really obscene what we do and how we treat pharmaceuticals. And that's yet again an example of the power of these special interests. In Virginia, the one major thing that we can be doing is to be looking at, for example, they call them PBMs, and they are the pharmacy benefit managers, which are basically the middlemen. So you got the manufacturers, the wholesalers, and then they come out to the retailers. And those middlemen really have a racket going on, especially here in Virginia.
Wow.
And it is really taking advantage of our seniors. So beyond thinking through prescription drug costs, ensuring that there are healthcare alternatives, like expanding what's called the PACE program, which allows for those who are nursing home eligible to stay safely at home. Mm-hmm. And then thinking through how we allow for our older Virginians to be able to continue in their livelihood. I mean, a lot of older Virginians want to continue being fruitful, and so some people are even wanting to do a very late career transition, or at least working part-time. We are really kind of ageist in the way we approach some of these policies. And so I think taking a good, long, hard look, when you go to my website, samforva.com, you can see kind of in detail how we want to approach it.
Absolutely. There's a couple other aspects of what COVID revealed that you discuss on your platform. Hopefully we can get to them before our time ends here. But one is education and child development. Now, first of all, I want to give a huge thanks and appreciation to every single teacher here in the Commonwealth, across the country, but more specifically the Commonwealth, who have really, done their very best to work and try to educate our children here during the pandemic, virtually, online, doing everything that they can. And a lot of times we find that our teachers don't have the resources that they need, or our children don't have the resources that they need to be successful. As a matter of fact, one thing that has been discussed, and we've known the studies for a long time, but creating one extra year before kindergarten, what's called preschool or child development, will increase an individual's earning capacity, intellectual capacity, and so much and so forth, as it relates to just having that one extra year. Can you discuss here in the Commonwealth how you see education and the holistic approach in human and child development as you have in your platform?
It's amazing that you bring that up, because the top education model in the world is the Finnish model, and they don't even begin primary school until after the age of 7.
Wow.
And what they do in those earliest years is focus completely on social and emotional growth and development, understanding your feelings, being able to communicate them. How well do you work in teams? Do you have self-control, self-motivation? I mean, these are the critical components to the holistic child development and creating a successful human being. So not only do we need to be looking prenatally and ensuring that there's the proper health, nutrition, and care for pregnant mothers. That was some of the work that I did in East Africa. But then from a very early age, the age of 2 and 3, starting with social and emotional curriculum, which we now have. Now, my bill, which just passed, is going to finally integrate social and emotional curriculum into our K-12 standards. But when we think about holistic child development, really breaking down the narrative of education and saying there are many components. One project that I'm doing in my district is substitute teaching in every school. And I have seen firsthand the emotional toll that it takes on these teachers and the baggage that these students are bringing, especially because I represent a very poor district. And so we have got to think about this more than just how quick can this kid read, and the overemphasis on third grade reading levels and correlating that to graduation rates, because we haven't really thought about everything we need to do to ensure this child is successful.
Absolutely. And, we talk about our children being the future, but when we look at policy and we look at practice, it's as if we don't value those words or value those students. So it's the various models. And again, you would have to see that models don't work for every single, is not a perfect match for every single state or school district. But we have to start to look somewhere to improve and to increase the opportunity for our children and also for our teachers. As it relates to our teachers and the support that they need, one aspect is salary. The Commonwealth, we're not at the bottom, we're not at the top, but we're somewhere floating between on the other side of that 50% we don't want to be in. How do you propose, or do you believe that we should implement any incentives or pay raises for our teachers?
Absolutely. We should put ourselves on a 4-year track to ensure that we are surpassing the national average. I co-sponsored a bill to do as much in the General Assembly. While we passed a raise, we did not adopt that bill, sadly. The reality is, being one of the richest states in the nation and being one of the lower states as far as the average pay, that is clearly unacceptable, and it's showing that we do not value teachers. And look, we've gotten the scarcity mentality built into us here in Virginia, where we have not been investing in our communities as much, and now that there has been a change here in our direction, we've got to send a clear message. We are going to fund the priorities that mean so much to us, and our teachers, having done that substitute teaching, I've seen kind of firsthand what they've got to deal with. We certainly need to value them moving forward.
Absolutely. In these final minutes that we have, I want to talk about one more issue, and that's voting. On your platform, you say voting is a right, and we know that the criminal justice system has really they've really done an injustice against our citizens who have served their time to society and paid their debt to society for any wrong that they were convicted of or maybe went to court for and had those charges against them by the court and their peers looked upon as them being guilty. In addition to that, we look at now how the last president that we had looked at voting and the false allegations of cheating and mail-in voting and ballots and so forth. What is your stance on voting being a right, and how would you expand voting access?
Yeah, I think that it is a racist construct to believe that the ability to vote should ever be taken away. In fact, in our 1902 Virginia Constitution, where it was deeply embedded this Jim Crow mentality, where it said Senator Glass said he wanted to eliminate, quote unquote, the influence of the darky in our politics. So for us, we've been conditioned in some respects to believe that this is something that should or can be taken away. And in fact, if you think about it deeper, more than a right, it is a basic foundation of our democracy, because there are some rights that can and should be taken away. But I believe in amending the Virginia Constitution to ensure that the ability to vote can never be taken away from a Virginian. And that's how deep we should believe in it. And, I don't do a whole lot of Republican and Democrat, but this is one clear issue where Republicans have been unabashed about how they are going to be attacking the ability to vote and access to the ballot box. And in fact, you go back to the 1980 convention rally for then presidential candidate Ronald Reagan, and the co-founder of the modern conservative movement, his name was Paul Weyrich, said, "We do not want everyone to vote. When more people vote, we lose." So it is clear in modern conservative theory that they do not want people to vote, and we have got to be aggressive in protecting it in Virginia, and I'm hoping that the U.S. Senate will do something bold about it as well.
Listen, you've heard the adage, the devil's in the details, and I'm so glad you brought up historical, legislative history and public policy, because if we just go back and read, we'll see the intent and the motive behind every single law and public policy that we have. Delegate Sam Rasoul, it's been a phenomenal honor and pleasure to have you here on Stay the Water. We like to wish you nothing but good luck on the campaign trail. But before we go, two things. One, tell us where our listeners can learn more about you, your platform, where they can volunteer, and where they can donate to your campaign.
You can find us at sam4va.com, and there you'll find links on how to get engaged. With a month left before this primary ends, we hope that people will go out and vote early and learn more about our candidacy. And, as a delegate over the past 8 years, it's been an honor to be able to serve and can't wait to be able to serve the people of Virginia, Norfolk, and beyond as your next lieutenant governor.
Absolutely. And I'll give you a quick 30-second connection that we probably have that you didn't know about. But I see you actually got your master's at Hawaii Pacific University.
Yeah.
I was going to say a childhood friend of mine actually went to Hawaii Pacific University. He was in the military, and when he got out, he enrolled in school, and he became Hawaii Pacific University's all-time leading scorer in basketball and was inducted into their Hall of Fame in 2011. His name is Llewellyn Spaulding. We call him Tony.
What a small world. Is he around town, or where is he at these days?
Actually, he's in Maryland now. So he was coaching a basketball team there. So, but again, small world. I just want to give you that quick connection that we're all connected here in our humanity and here in the Commonwealth.
Well, when you get that charity basketball game going, sign me up.
You got it. I'm going to hold you to it, okay?
There we go.
Delegate Rasoul, thank you so much. Again, you can find out more about his campaign at sam4va.com. That's sam4va.com. Good luck to you, Delegate Rasoul.
Thanks, Dr. Claville. Appreciate you.
You got it. Again, we want to thank everyone for joining us here on Save the Water as we discuss the hard issues with candidates who want to be your representative here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So we not just get the campaign platform, but we delve into it. We go a little deeper to find out exactly how they plan to impact our community, and not just in Hampton Roads, but the African-American community and generations to come. If you have any questions that you have, any comments, go to our social media. Go to wnsbonline.org, or you can go to @Hot91Online. That's @Hot91Online. You can comment and give us any questions on our Facebook, on our Twitter, on our Instagram, and also on our YouTube. We want to hear from you because this show is about you, the listeners. And, we have another candidate coming up, but we're going to take a commercial break in just a few moments as we get Delegate Hala Ayala on the line for Lieutenant Governor. So right now, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we want to tell all of our mothers out there, wish you a phenomenal Mother's Day. We'll be back in just a moment.
Make sure you wake up early Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. with the Blazing Hot Morning Show.
I'm Cheryl Wilkerson. I'll have your Behold moment, your good news, your headline news, and don't forget, entertainment news.
I'm DJ INC from the Top Ropes. I'll tell you why every day's a holiday. I'll give you the update on those sports and on-the-spot traffic and weather updates.
And check out the Blazing Hot Tea Report with your girl, K Noteworthy, where I'll be serving all the scoop about your favorite celebrity.
And can't forget about the Blazing Hot Morning Shower mix with the legendary DJ Heart Attack. So start your day with us, Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. right here on Blazing Hot 91. We'll get through this together.
Blazing Hot 91 is looking for your support. Financial support, that is. Get ready. Coming this May, we're going to see how much you love us.
Quiet, he's going to say something.
We'll be asking for your tax-deductible contribution. We're a public radio station. That means we're supported by you, the listener. You guys tell us you love us all the time.
The hottest radio station.
Now, you can show us how much. And that keeps us blazing the airways with your urban alternative mix of music.
Yo, you know the deal.
So start planning your contribution to Blazing Hot 91 now. Be ready to drop that cash. Save the date, May 17th, 18th, and 19th. It's all love, and it's all for you on Blazing Hot 91.
Welcome to Stay in the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville. We want to thank you all for joining us here on this beautiful Sunday in Hampton Roads, Virginia. And this is just not any other Sunday, but it is also Mother's Day. So here at Stay in the Water, here on WNSB Blazing Hot 91, we want to wish all the mothers out there a phenomenal and wonderful Mother's Day. Without you, none of us would be here. So if you have your mother in your life, make sure you spoil her today. This is her day. Give her her due. Because here we believe that everyone is somebody. Also, remember, make sure that you're taking care of your health. Make sure you're talking with your healthcare physician, and make sure that you are adhering to the guidelines needed to be safe. Because here we will get through this together. And again, for the month, an entire month, we're continuing our discussion with candidates who want to represent you statewide. Last month we talked with candidates who are running for various House seats in the House General Assembly. And this month, for the entire month, we're talking with candidates that want to represent you as Lieutenant Governor, Attorney General, and Governor of the Commonwealth, who are going to participate in the Democratic primary. The Democratic primary is right around the corner. It's June 8th, but early voting has already started. So you can go to your registrar's office and vote in person. You can actually do a mail-in ballot. All you have to do is just simply go online or call your registrar's office to see how you can vote if you don't want to go in. But you can cast your ballot right now in the primary. And the primary is created to determine which candidate you want to represent your party in the general election, which will be in November. The Republican Party had their unassembled convention and primary on yesterday. So we'll figure out who's going to represent them in the statewide offices in their ranked choice ballot process. But the Democrats are going through the usual process and having you go to the polls to determine who's going to represent you. So this half hour, we are blessed to have Delegate Hala Ayala here on Stay in the Water to tell us why she wants to represent you as Lieutenant Governor in the Commonwealth. Delegate, thank you so much for being on Stay in the Water.
Dr. Claville, thank you for having me. Thank you for allowing me to appear on State of the Water. There's something in the water here in Virginia, and we're hoping that it's good stuff. Happy Mother's Day to all those who are celebrating, listening, or have been impacted by so many powerful women in our lives that have really transformed our journey and made us who we are today. So I just want to celebrate and send a shout out and a blessed Sunday to all who are listening.
Absolutely. And listen, you really summed it up for a lot of Virginians, especially here in Hampton Roads because we're blessed to be by the water, the beautiful ocean front that we have, and there seems like there's water everywhere. You can go and have fun and enjoy yourself. And you're right, there is something in the water in Virginia, something in the water in our politics, in our education, in our food, in our people, our way of life. And it's just something that attracts people to this area. As a lifelong Virginian, tell us how you feel about being a lifelong Virginian and what you think the message should be to the rest of the country.
Not just Virginia, but the rest of the country, and I think you touch on so much. Water is transformative. It kind of transforms to anything it touches, right? It molds and shapes itself, and it's fluid, and it's sometimes spiritual, relaxing, meditative, all of these things. But in relationship to politics, I think we are going through our own transformation. Now that Black and brown women have been at the base of the Democratic Party, have been carrying the water to the finish line, so to speak, and making sure that we elect good candidates that are going to fight for our issues, it's really time that we have representation. So that's why I'm running. And being a part of Virginia is a blessing. She can be a little, transformative herself. Sometimes you see a couple steps back and 2 steps forward. But, when you live here and you have your roots here, I celebrate that because life has given me a bunch of water to swim in, some rough, some smooth, and some transformative. And I'm just so blessed to be a part of this atmosphere today that is really going to transform in essentially the Commonwealth and its politics.
Absolutely. My wife, she's what you call an island girl, and she talks about, being on the island and the water and how, as you mentioned, how transformative it is just being by the water. And you mentioned so much, and you bring a lot of that out of what Virginia is. And not just that, but also the history. This is where America started, and this is also where slavery ended as well. When you talk about, what we call Freedom Fort here at Fort Monroe and so forth, and a lot of firsts, and also some other dark areas of our history of the start of the Confederacy, the end of it, and the like. So taking all of that together, we as a country and as a Commonwealth, we've kind of come through another dark chapter. We're still coming through it. And I say we have a slogan here on WNSB, we will get through this together. And we're talking about the pandemic. And the pandemic and COVID-19 revealed a lot of issues that we've been dealing with. I want to take a look at your campaign platform a little and talk about, where you believe the biggest influence that you can have as Lieutenant Governor in helping to influence the process to help our recovery and to move Virginia forward.
That's a big question, Doctor. I will tell you this. To touch on the pandemic and the things we've been facing, this Commonwealth is the oldest legislative body in the country. We, women, when you're talking 1619, when you're talking about the recent celebration of Jamestown, which I did not attend, you're talking about things that are dark pasts of our history and our painful past in our history. We have a reckoning in this country and in this Commonwealth that we have to deal with. We have to roll up our sleeves and just have the heart-to-heart and hard conversation about our pain. This doesn't just mean about the issues and what we're going to do and some candidates who will make promises of the future, but bring that proactive advocacy and voice into this space because we're living it. We've lived it. It's in our DNA. You can't get rid of it. And the things that we've done in the General Assembly, including myself, when you're talking about healthcare, the things that I have been disenfranchised by, my fellow Commonwealth communities have been disenfranchised by, we have fought for it to expand it to over 500,000 Virginians, and we're going to continue to work harder. We put in in our budget this year, a study to look at universal health care because we're reckoning with so many inequities in all of our systems, not just our justice system, not just our housing systems, not just in the school system, but every system that this Commonwealth and this country has been built on. And I think the passion for the issues and the experience and the lived experience because if we had another hour, I would tell you about that. You would write a book and call me a lie, because it is something that is really hard to articulate at times and people to fathom, because how can someone with so much lived experience live this long and not be a statistic? I am the exception, not the rule. And this is the power of this year's election, to bring us to the table, to have a seat at the table. So I and you and everyone listening is not on the menu. We'll continue to fight for our HBCUs. We will continue to fight for legalization of marijuana. We will continue to fight for raising teacher pay raise, and again, healthcare. All of these systems that we talk about are so important to the vital Virginian and their everyday lives. Equity, equality, and this is why I'm running for lieutenant governor, because these lived experiences, I want to be the last woman in the room with the governor, whoever she or he may be, and talk about these pains raw, authentically, and just bring it every day. And this doesn't mean disrespectfully. This means that we're going to talk about how we can make progress together forward. Again, it takes representation.
Right.
We've had men lead in this body, but it's 401 years. We've never had a woman of color. I am an Afro-Latina woman. I want to be not the first. I don't want to be the last. I just want to create the space for our future, planting those seeds, because you can't be what you can't see. And you definitely can't fight for things if you've never felt them before.
Yeah. You know, you bring a lot of to the forefront that we've dealt with as a country, as a Commonwealth, you know, as we like to say, the good, the bad, and the ugly, but I also like to say the optimistic, you know, because I believe that in American exceptionalism, you know, we can face these hard issues, and we have faced some of them and come out on the other side victorious. And some we had to go back to the drawing board, you know, and look at it again and come back out. You know, you operate professionally in a space of cybersecurity, and we know that there are not a lot of women in that field. There are not a lot of women of color in that field either. You know, how would you take those experiences that you've had in your personal career, and how have you brought that to the 51st District in representing them?
Thank you for asking that question. You're right. There has been an inequity in STEM age, careers for a very long time. And I think a lot of it has, there's isms in this space, right? And without diving too deep in there, whether it is things that we have to deal with as women when we are in these fields, because we're caretakers, we're heads of the household, we are the CEO, doctors, counselors, teachers, et cetera, and we take on a lot of different roles in our community and dependent. So not every career environment has a level playing field for women, especially women of color in this field. When I walked into cybersecurity, it was not intentional. I learned it in a blue-collar way, meaning I don't have a professional certification, no longer hold one, but I didn't have professional schooling or a master's degree. I was a poor girl from Alexandria, Virginia, lived in the projects. My father was murdered when I was 2 years old. My mother suffered from PTSD. Never did I think I was going to live this long. Needless to say, I thought this cycle was going to repeat itself, and it sort of did. I was working minimum wage, had my son, almost died having him. Fast forward it was the military that gave me an opportunity to transform my career. They said, you're a hard worker, you're passionate about serving your country, even if you're not wearing the uniform, and you want to be a part of the conversation for America. And not knowing that I would be one of very few women in the room, I knew that I had to work twice as hard. I knew I had to work to make sure that my I's were dotted and my T's were crossed, and had to go back once, twice, 3 times, because, we are expected to not only perform, but overly perform. And in my work, I brought that to the legislature, fighting for privacy and equity and making sure that personal identifiable information is protected, because it hurts us, our communities, Black and brown communities, in a very exceptional way. But also we work to reform, our privacy laws this year. Me and Delegate Hayes were chief co-patron of the first privacy law that really began the conversation about what we need to do in this cyberspace to start protecting consumers,
yes,
their personal information, and so on and so forth. But this will be more of that, because data is a very powerful tool, and COVID has really heightened that awareness. We saw Donald Trump and how he jeopardized our national security,
right,
our democracy. So I even put forward legislation for election security and how technologies can work, or let's talk about how technologies can work. This is the floor, not the ceiling.
Right.
Conversations will continue to evolve.
You're listening to WNSB Blazing Hot 91 here at Norfolk State University. This is Save the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville. For the month of May and June, we're talking with candidates who want to represent you as their Democratic candidate in the general election for Attorney General, for Governor, and also for Lieutenant Governor. Right now, we're speaking with Delegate Hala Ayala, who wants to represent you for Lieutenant Governor here in the Commonwealth. You mentioned
That's right, Doctor. That's right.
You mentioned cybersecurity, and our producer here, he's a master's student in cybersecurity here at Norfolk State University, DJ Scandalous, and he's up for graduation very soon. So as you were talking about cybersecurity, he was pumping his fist. And of course, our phenomenal...
You go, boy.
And our phenomenal alum, you mentioned Cliff Hayes, who's a phenomenal support of not just Norfolk State, the Center for African American Public Policy, but just this area that he represents. And, you know, you mentioned those areas that are that's an area that's growing, that's increasing, and we have to increase representation, which brings me to jobs in the economy on your platform. You know, it's, of course, you know, the more that, you know, we provide opportunities for citizens to work, the better they are, the better our Commonwealth is, but also good jobs, living wage jobs. But a lot of times our people of color, African Americans, other black and brown communities are given the scraps or even left out of those really, really good jobs. What is how do you see influencing the jobs in the economy as for the Commonwealth, and then more specifically to allow those communities that have been historically left out and intentionally left out come to the table, as you stated?
I thank you for that question. You know, it's important because I was a product of that. Like, my future, you know, it's not that, you know, you walk, you know, when you're growing up, you're looking for either your next job or maybe you're changing careers. There's not a roadmap for this. Right? We're not given a rule book or a playbook on how to navigate these waters. But I think it's important about access to information, right? And being informed on what steps I can take to either change a career or get the training that I need, or what are those next steps. And so part of the priorities beyond healthcare is to leverage technology to make our government better serve the people, like outreach and working with companies and industry to talk about how we get certifications, how we can work for those who may not can afford this certification, but what can we do in an alternative way to help folks get there? Because in my field, I couldn't even buy my house if it wasn't for the technology job that I have, because it pays more than sometimes the average, the job out there. And, you know, technology jobs, we have over 40,000 jobs available on the books. We need to fill these jobs. So I'll be working with the governor, again, being in the room to talk about ways we can advocate for access to these jobs. You know, I tried to go to school, couldn't afford it. So again, this could be part of the plan of a 2-year college tuition, which Governor Northam has put forward already to talk about free college tuition or CTEs, or certification trainings, if you will. These are opportunities where we can capitalize on the availability of these technology jobs. My contract's about to end now, and the job that I'm working, there's over 40,000 jobs.
Wow.
That I could search through, or to my particular search criteria, 32,000. You know, this is an abundance of opportunity for us to give Virginians an opportunity to thrive, to build a career or a new career, but we got to provide them the resources and tools. So what I mean, and just kind of just packaging this up, is to invest in that infrastructure, you know, building bridges, you know, making sure that everyone has an equitable opportunity. Doesn't matter who you are, the color of your skin, your zip code, who you love, who you pray to. we need to be advantageous about, moving us together forward.
That's right. You also mentioned, you and your experience, in giving birth. And one thing we've discussed and found out during this time period of the pandemic, again, is really uncovered a lot of issues that we've been dealing with, but haven't had the platform to talk about it. No one wanted to hear it. And that is maternity health for especially African-American women and women of color, Black and brown. You talk about in your healthcare on your platform here in your drive to become lieutenant governor. How important is that in your platform, the healthcare for women, but more specifically for Black and poor communities?
I'm going to be authentic with you. When I was having my son, I was in the and if this is TMI, turn off the radio now, but almost died having my son. My blood pressure shot 200 over 250.
Oh,
I should have been in stroke mode. I was told to shut up while I was having my baby. And this is what happens either while you're having your child or after. Too often Black women and brown women are not heard when they speak up about the pre-existing conditions or the concerns. I had a pre-existing condition brought on by my pregnancy that I had no clue about. So there was disparities and just prenatal care, before I even gave birth. And for that reason, Black women are twice as likely to suffer from life-threatening pregnancy complications. I was in that category. I could have died. And we're almost 4 times likely to die during birth and 9 times more likely to lose a pregnancy. I am so glad that we fought for this. I worked with Delegate Herring. We worked on the maternal mortality study.
Yes.
And I sponsored the Fetal and Infant Mortality Review Team, which talks to these issues of why this is happening. We need to dig down deep. Again, I championed the Equal Rights Amendment, and me and Delegate Carol Foy carried that across the finish line. And we fought for this, but this did not provide equity on all of these systems. This is why representation matters and bringing our voices to the table. Again, we fight, we're loyal when it comes to the ballot box, but democracy doesn't just end there in engagement. We have to be intentional about representation. And we bring these very issues, addressing the maternal and fetal and infant mortality and the disparities in our pregnancy and the care that we receive prior to us giving birth and after. We need to be heard, we need to be seen, and not erased.
It's that authenticity that we often miss, when we're talking with our policymakers and politicians. And to hear your story, it drives home, why you have that on your platform and how near and dear it is to your heart. And, a lot of women had deal with that issue and have dealt with it, but they haven't had an advocate to actually talk about those issues in the forefront and hopefully driving not just policy, but behavior change in the medical field when dealing with and offering services, because they are practitioners of services, practicing medicine to our communities. Which brings me to education. In order to understand these issues that we're going through, we first have to educate the community and educate those who are actually, doing more harm than good about it. And that also starts with our schools. Part of your platform is strengthening our schools. Now, we've heard the rhetoric on education, teacher pay and so forth, but how do you believe that you can influence the strengthening of our schools, and what does that actually mean, strengthening our schools and future education?
Well, that's a big conversation, because if you want to talk about the school-to-prison pipeline, we took action this year in legislation to prevent students from being charged with disorderly conduct, right? Too often, my son included, were diagnosed with ADHD. I didn't believe it at first, right? And it was just because this is my baby. I'm like, what is happening? And it was hard for me to grapple with. But I knew statistically that too often Black and brown children are put in this category in our school system. So I leaned in and I wanted a second opinion and got it, had to advocate for my son to do so. And it's come to find out not only did he have a disability, but he also has Asperger's. And this often leads to some of these conversations or connections with the school to prison pipeline. But in one aspect, our special education or our children with disabilities or learning disabilities need more resources. And we need to provide the education and implicit bias training to these teachers. But this is not just a black and brown issue. This is an issue that impacts all children and should be supported in an equitable and equality manner, meaning the resources and paying the teachers what they deserve so they can provide our children with the necessities and the tools and the education they need to thrive as they move on in their educational career. Going back to the prison to school pipeline, we did pass legislation, again, with disorderly conduct, removing the requirement that principals report these or constitutes a misdemeanor, right? This puts us in a system that these children do not belong in. We need to work harder to tear down these biases and through every part of this law. If we're looking at K through 12, just in general, COVID has exacerbated some of these inequities, whether it's our infrastructure, whether it is our, education, in totality in the Commonwealth. I would support a creation of an education equity fund, evaluating our funding and our school gaps, right? So we can't give equity and resources and the tools that schools need if we don't know where they're needed. And I would collaborate with localities to talk about these inequities and their needs. Also, expanding on access to our earlier point about technology, career, and technical education programs for students in the Commonwealth. Higher ed, we need to work hard. These systems are diverse and decentralized, and we face a lot of challenges in these systems. So, and even not every college is the same. So we need to support higher ed systems and do what we can to make it accessible and affordable. But I think it starts with representation, working with our HBCUs as well to make sure we recruit and retain our black and brown teachers in this system. Again, there are so many different levels of inequities that we can touch on in this topic. I don't know if you have the time, but I'm willing to go in and talk in a little bit more deeper, but we just need to be intentional about peeling away all these inequities.
Absolutely. And like you said, we could talk hours because the information that you've delved into, you've really, as you start to peel back, as we say, peel back that onion, the layers of it, there's more and more and more, but unfortunately we are coming to the end of our time. But what I want to do is give you an opportunity to tell our listeners where they can learn more about you, your platform, where they can sign up to volunteer or even donate to your campaign in these last 30 seconds.
Dr. Claville, thank you. And thank you for having me on this wonderful State of the Water, a transformative show and informative as well. And if you want to come join the Hala back train, if you will, for lack of a better word, you can go to Hala, HALA, FOR, Virginia, spelled out, .com. It has all of our platforms, all of our insights and information. And I hope, if God's willing, that I am your next Lieutenant Governor.
Thank you so much, Delegate Ayala, for joining us here on State of the Water. Good luck to you on the campaign trail. That's halaforvirginia.com. And again, here on State of the Water, we bring movers and shakers to you, the listener, to understand what is happening in our community. We delve into the deep questions. We peel back the covers to understand not just what's being told to you on the radio or told to you on television, but what's really happening in the legislature itself. Tune in next Sunday as we have other guests who are tuning in to represent you for Attorney General here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Also, once again, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there who are listening to us on the radio, also online and streaming all across the country. This is your day. If you have your mother, make sure you spoil her and give her your very best. And we'll see you on next week, Sunday at 1 o'clock.